Holmgren has coached some of the best quarterbacks in NFL history, won a Super Bowl as a head coach of the Green Bay Packers. He was the first head coach to lead the Seahawks to a Super Bowl, also led the Hawks to 5 division titles. And Mike, you've accomplished so much in your football career at all levels. How much do you miss it now that you're retired?
You know, Paul, I really do miss it. I should qualify that. I miss certain things. You know, I miss the players. I really do. I'd yell at them, and I'd get angry with them at times, but I hope they know I loved them. And I miss my coaches. I miss the people. I don't miss the hours. I don't miss eating off paper plates. I don't miss the time away from my family. I don't miss those things. And, you know, it's funny. When I stopped coaching, you know, for about a year and a half, 2 years after that, you get your name gets mentioned for things, and your ego gets stroked, and you think, well, I can go back, and it took me a while to kind of get comfortable and just entering this new phase of my life. But now I'm in a good place, and I did it a long time. But I do miss certain things.
Yeah, you did do it a long time. How long did it take you? You know, when you finally left the Browns organization, and then you got that, say, year or two of flirtation with other teams. When did it finally click? Was it a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years? How long did it take?
Well, it was an incident more than anything else. The 49ers were looking for a coach, and that's where I started. And I grew up in San Francisco, right in the city. So I said, if I ever did go back and do that again, coach again, the 49ers would be a good place. I'd like to do that, I think. So I told my agent to get a hold of the 49ers, and he phoned me back a few days later and said, you know what? They think you're a little old.
Is that what they said?
Yeah, well, not in so many words, but I mean that was what was meant. They were going to go for a younger guy. Mm-hmm. And so I heard it, and it stung a little bit, you know, because I still feel pretty good, and I think I can coach, you know. That's my own ego talking. But it was something, Paul, I needed to hear. I think it was something I needed to hear. Once I heard that, then I said, okay, let's figure out some other way to go here.
But didn't Kathy, throughout your life, tell you things you really didn't want to hear, but you needed to hear?
Oh, you know Kathy. You know, she said to say hello, by the way. Yeah, she's pretty honest with me, you know, and we've been married 49 years, and the one job during that time we talked about earlier, you and I, was the New York Jets, and I was going to fly back there to really consider coaching them. Woody Johnson, who was the owner, who's now an ambassador, you know, was very, very nice on the phone. So I told Kath, I said, listen, I got a chance to do this. What do you think? And she said, you know, I love you to death, and we've been together a long time. And if you want to do this, I'm with you all the way like always. But I'm not moving back there, you know. And we had never done that. We'd always, you know, football's different than baseball. You know, it's year round, and we always lived in the same house. She didn't travel to see me and things like that. But this was going to be different. So I thought about it a little bit. I said, I don't want to do that. That's not going to work for us. And so I told Mr. Johnson, sorry, but it's not going to work. So she will speak her mind, but she's always been there. She's a great coach's wife, among other things.
Well, 49 years. So 2021 will be 50.
Yeah, I know.
Are you already planning?
Well, it's gonna. My kids are. Believe it or not, my kids are. They go. We got to do a wing ding now. It's 50 years, and there's other things with the kids. And you've met my daughters. Yep. So I don't know what they're gonna. It'll be if we last that long. If I last that long, it'll be good.
Oh, so what's cool? They're taking it out of your hands. You may not have to do anything, Mike. You may just have to say, where are we going?
Yeah, but you know what? I learned a long time ago. It was kind of a funny thing. One time, early in our marriage, she said, you know, you don't have to get me anything for my birthday. You really don't. So I said, okay. You know, I mentioned that on the radio 10 years later, and they go, are you out of your mind? You actually believe that?
You learned a lesson there, huh? Oh, man. Right now you're doing some broadcasting with Westwood One. Are you still doing that?
I just called off this year.
Okay.
You know, I'd done it for 5 years and worked the Super Bowls, and they were great. And I did some color. I didn't want to travel too much, but I did Seahawks games. I did the 49ers game because I have a home down there. I just didn't want to fly and do all that. But I started thinking I like doing the KGR thing. It's I don't do any of the heavy lifting, but I'm just there and telling stories. And I got time now to do some other things I want to do.
That almost kind of lets you land the plane, that NFL and football career plane, a little bit easier, huh? To kind of a little broadcasting here and there, and then all of a sudden you just like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, you know what? I think so. I think that's a good point. And I think, you and I have talked about working together and doing some stuff. And that in and of itself feels really attractive to me. And I told you that. Yeah. But then I start really thinking through in the time and the commitment it takes to do a good job. And, like I said, I coached for a long time. This probably helped me land the plane, as you pointed out.
Yeah. Lofa Tatupu was in here, and we talked about his career. He had 6 years with 3 different coaches. And before I could even ask him who was the most demanding, I think I got demanding out of my mouth. And he cut me off and said, Holmgren, of course. You had to be demanding because you were from a different era of coaching than say today. But, did you think you were too demanding at times?
I didn't think so at the time. Reflecting back on it, I probably was. I don't think too demanding. There was always, as far as I was concerned, a bright line that you didn't cross. And coaches and their players and their coaches and these are the rules. I didn't have a lot of rules, as an example, but I was pretty strict with that sort of thing. And I grew up in the league under Bill Walsh, and you carry those things along with you, I think, when you're establishing your own identity as a head coach. And the 49ers were very demanding. His line was, if you don't strive for perfection, you'll never even have a shot at getting there. You probably won't get there. No one ever gets perfect. But if you don't try, you're not going to even have a shot. And so I did that. I saw Lofa the other night, as a matter of fact, at Cliff Averill had a fundraiser, and I was there. And it's great to see those guys. Give them a hug, joke about old times. I think they might like me a little more now than they did then. I hope.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah, I was pretty demanding of my players and my coaches. I think, and I remember again referencing Coach Walsh when he would rip me, and I was kind of the whipping boy because he coached quarterbacks and I coached quarterbacks, and so he was kind of on me pretty good. And I remember going home being mad and telling Kath, you know what, if I ever get a chance to be a head coach, I am not doing that, and I'm not doing this, and I'm not doing this. And then you know what, Paul? I get to be a head coach, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm doing exactly what he did to me. I'm what's wrong with me? But that's how I have a great relationship with my coaches, the guys I worked with for years. And if we have these reunions, and things, you get to see guys you haven't seen for a long time, and it's special. But look, it was like you said, it was a different time. I think I never thought the coaches had a shelf life. I thought I could coach until I'm 80.
Yeah.
But now that I'm not, I look back on it and I think I don't know how I would handle or how frustrated I would get with some of the social media stuff and the stuff that gets out and talked about that I would try and keep in-house and deal with it like as a family thing. Mm-hmm. And so it's different now. And I'm not saying that it was better then. It's just different now.
What about some of those practices back then? Because we were over there in Cheney with you, and when something broke down on offense in practice and you would just light them up, did you instruct your kind of your media relations people wherever you were, hey, kind of protect me and kind of control things, or was it just kind of like you knew the cameras that were there and you were just going to coach despite what they were recording?
Yeah, I think, I think, and you could come back at me on this, but I think I had a pretty good relationship with the media. Mm-hmm. And I thought I was pretty honest. I didn't, there were certain things I didn't want to talk about necessarily, but I, again, respected the job that you guys did. I really did. And so that's kind of how I approach things. No, to answer your question, I never did tell them, make sure they don't shoot this or that. Having said that, Steve Sable from NFL Films always wanted to mic me, during practice or during games. And I for years, I said no. Because my language wasn't great, and I was kind of embarrassed by that, but I'd get excited, and I was emotional, and I didn't want anyone out there to hear or see that or how I was doing that. And then he said, put it on, and then I'll let you listen to it, and then you can edit it. And so I did that. But I never told our local guys, I never told our guys to do that. And I think I kind of trusted the guys in the room, but now it seems like everything is out there. It just seems like everything gets out there, So
speaking of which, do you like the Hard Knocks thing? Like, do you think that?
No. I'll stop you right there. I was asked to do that a few times. I said, and absolutely not. Now I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but now I think teams have to. If you there's a rotation kind of. Thank goodness that wasn't the way, because I would have really clamped things down. I think it wouldn't have been a very good show.
But John Gruden seemed to embrace it this time around with the Raiders.
I told
Did
John.
you watch some of that?
No, I didn't. I didn't. But in fact, I have not seen Hard Knocks. Everyone else in the world has, but I've never watched it. But with John, I did tell him. I thought, because he's like the son I never had, And I said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" He goes, "Well, I don't have a choice. I mean, they want us to do it." So I said, "Okay, but just understand, everything's out there, So I did not see it though.
But you keep in touch with those guys and Andy Reid? And,
yeah. There's a few of my guys. I call them my guys. That was that
sure,
first staff I had in Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And Andy and Steve Mariucci and Gruden shared an office. We had, in those days it was the old Lambeau Field offices, not the new one, the corporate thing.
Yeah.
I didn't even have a window in mine. But they shared an office, and what I didn't know is that they always were competing for my attention in that, because I'd say, okay, we're going to set up the red zone. What plays you got? And they would go around the room, and if I said, that's a good one, we'll do that one. And they'd go back in the room if their play was chosen after the meeting, and they had a big board. They'd mark it. Okay, I'm one ahead of you. And all this kind of stuff. I didn't know any of that was happening. So, but they were good, great young coaches, and they're like my sons, And every once in a while, I don't talk to them a lot, but we do chat.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine, everybody talks about coaches like you who have coaching trees and these guys that come down in the offshoots, and Gruden and Andy Reid are always, right there at the top. Andy gets so much credit for the way he calls plays. He's such a genius out there, so to speak. Did you see that in Andy? Or do you see that now?
Yeah, he's doing a great job now. I mean, he's really, I told Kath, Andy could coach until he's 80 as long as he has Mahomes.
Yeah.
It's because life is good when you have that great quarterback, as you well know. But he, early on, I first met Andy when I was at BYU. And one of my jobs was I was in charge of the graduate assistant coaches. So there were 6 of them. And I had to make sure they were doing the right stuff and all that kind of stuff. And Andy was one of them. He just graduated from BYU. And it didn't take me long at all to recognize how smart he was. I loved his personality. He was funny. And his talent, he's a talented man. And I told him, at the time, I said, if I ever get to be a head guy, I'm going to phone you first, which I did. When we were in Green Bay, he was the first call I made. And I helped him. He followed me. I helped him get a job at San Francisco State, where I had coached, straight out of BYU. Mm-hmm. And so we've kept in touch over the years. We know his family very well. They know ours. And he's doesn't surprise me at all. I wasn't the smartest guy in the room, but I could recognize coaching talent, I think, and he was right away. He was a no-brainer. Same with Gruden.
Well, when you're back in Green Bay and you leave the Packers, do you remember the first time the Seahawks contacted you and said, "We want you to come here"?
Yeah, I kind of do. And I mean, those things, you have all the guys. When I first started, when I left the 49ers, I didn't have an agent. Assistant coaches didn't have agents. You know, you just went in and they browbeat you and you signed something, you know. Then all of a sudden, we won Super Bowls, and so I hired a good friend of mine, Bob Lamont, to be an agent, and then he came back to me as Ron Wolf did. We were preparing for a Super Bowl. And Ron came in the office, and he goes, "I'm getting a call from Seattle on you." And I said, "What?" And I'm thinking, I'm preparing for the Super Bowl. I don't want to think about that right now. But that was the first time.
What happened there in that last year with the Packers? Things kind of went a different direction, right?
Well, we had, what happened was the year before, we went to back-to-back Super Bowls. So that we lost the Super Bowl, and Seattle had talked to my agent and talked to Ron Wolf. And then the commissioner, Paul Tagliabue at the time, phoned Bob Harlan, who was the president, and said, "He can't go. You cannot let him go." That was the year before I came. And I got wind of that. I didn't know it. I got wind of that, and then I was on the competition committee at the time. So the commissioner and I went into a room and had one. I mean, I go, "You can't do that." And he goes, "Mike, please." And he was Paul was great with me. But he said, "Parcells just left New England, and they were going through all that stuff with the Jets and all that stuff. This can't happen. We can't let this happen all the time when you lose a Super Bowl, and then all of a sudden you just leave. I don't want that to happen in the league." I said, "Well, why? That's not fair to me. I'm not saying I'm going. I'm just saying I can't even talk to these people."
Sure.
And so he said, "It is what it is." So that I would go back to Green Bay the next year, and we had a good team. We went to the playoffs, and then we lost that game to the 49ers where Steve Young threw that miracle pass to Terrell Owens. Otherwise, we might have gone back to the third Super Bowl. Yeah. And so then the Seattle had kept in contact, and so that's how that happened. The irony there is that so that happens. Andy Reid's on my staff. I wanted to go to Seattle. I was going to interview in Philadelphia and Baltimore, but I went to Seattle first, and so I told the other two teams. Once Paul gave me the offer, I said, "No, I can't. Oh, that's fine. I'm going to stay." So Jeffrey Lurie, says, I phoned him up and I said, "Mr. Lurie, I'm staying in Seattle." "Well, what do I do?" He goes, "I'm in a limousine going to someplace," and he goes, I said, "Hire Andy Reid." And so they did that. And so a lot of things happened based on that last year in Green Bay for our team. Yeah. Had we knocked down the ball and gone to the Super Bowl again in Green Bay, I don't know. I can't speculate on what would have happened, but it would have been a different scenario.
Well, Paul Allen gave you an 8-year deal.
Yeah.
Which was back then is just ridiculous. I mean, Gruden's got his 10-year deal, but that's 20 years later.
Yeah, right.
It was. You got an 8-year deal.
Yeah.
He was all in on you.
No.
And gave you control for that first 4 years or so, and gave you, you were calling all the shots.
Right.
So, before we get to that, how was Paul Allen? And he was just inducted into the Ring of Honor. Give me some thoughts on Paul.
First of all, he's great. You couldn't work for a better owner. He was very supportive. I didn't see him a lot. He was very involved with the Trailblazers, and of course very involved with the Seahawks. But the basketball was his first love, I would say. Mm-hmm. Now he kept football in Seattle, and he did all those wonderful things. But he wasn't very. I'd have meetings with him, and he was. They were kind of formal sometimes, and if I could get him talking about another subject and something, space exploration or anything.
Music.
Yeah, music. Yes, music. He'd light up and but as an owner, you couldn't ask for a better guy. He would always he wanted to help. What can I do to make us better? I remember a couple conversations we were struggling a little bit early on and trying to find the quarterback before Matt came, and we were playing at the University of Washington, and they were building the stadium. And he asked me, he goes, "What do you think? I mean, how's the season looking?" We played a few games. I said, "Well, I think we're going to hit our stride when we get to the stadium, but prior to that, it's going to be, we're going to have our bumps."
So you were just honest with him at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see any other way to do that. He's my boss, and he gave me the shot. So I said, "That's how I think it's going to go." And then, there are other times. I came in one time after we won a big game against the Rams. I probably told you this story. And we won in the last 30 seconds. Corin Robinson caught a pass, and I was jacked. I was pumped. It was a big game. I'm the last one off the field. And Paul, typically, he would line up. He would stand inside the locker room door and shake the hands of the players as they came in, and coaches, whoever came in the door. But he had his guys around me. His bodyguards were there, Navy SEALs. So they were.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys were Navy SEALs?
Oh, yeah. They were all ex-Navy SEAls. Mm-hmm. They were special forces, and they were there. And I knew them. I kind of knew them. I'd met them over the years. But they were there and kind of standing in the background. I come in, and I see him, and I'm so pumped. I grab him by the shoulders and start shaking him. Go, "Is that the greatest game you've ever?" I'm shaking him, and he didn't quite know. I just see the color drain from him. I go, "Oh." I'm thinking to myself, I probably shouldn't have done this. So I start brushing his sweater, whatever he's wearing, smoothing it out, and I'm thinking that I'm going to get jumped by these Navy SEALs. What are you doing? And then all of a sudden it clicks, and he gets what I was doing. He gets what I'm doing, and he swings a punch, hits me, gives me a noogie. Boom! That was, and now he's into it, So, we had a great relationship, I think, and it was, he was special. He was a unique guy.
That's a great story. I remember when you guys clinched, when you beat the Panthers out there, and he walked by me just because you were going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And I was doing a live postgame show, and he walked by me, and I grabbed him because he never talks to, he's not big on the media.
No.
He's not big on interviews. And I said, if ever and I don't know, I have even lost my mind. I grabbed Paul Allen by the jacket, and I said, "Hey, come on over here." And I pulled him into the interview. We talked real quick, and I let him go because I knew he was uncomfortable. But, we all get caught up in that emotion.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And it's an emotional business, an emotional game. And he was, I didn't do that again. I kind of learned my lesson on that. But, and then we'd been in business meetings. We'd have money meetings. And he'd sit down and go, how much is this going to cost me? And he'd throw a pencil. But it was kind of like, this is what I have to do with these guys. And then he'd go for about 15, 20 minutes, and he'd go, "Okay, what do you need?" Yeah. He kind of set the table, but then at the end of the conversation, he'd go, "Okay, what do you need?" And then we'd do it, and he'd do it.
It seems like the cool thing with him is, unlike a lot of other owners, he would let you do the football thing. He wouldn't hover over you like a Jerry Jones type. He would just let you do the team, take care of business, and let's win some football games.
That's exactly right. And that's why I say, as far as ownership goes, and you look at the league, and you've covered football, you know this league better than most people. The teams, the organizations that I think conduct business that way have the most chance of being successful, because the owners. When I was president of the Cleveland Browns, I would sit in the owners' meetings, and I was the only non-owner in there because my owner in Cleveland wouldn't go to those meetings. So when they'd have an executive session, privilege session, they call it, just the owners, just one man. The lawyers weren't in there, the general manager wasn't in there, one man. And then they'd bang around some stuff. And I saw firsthand. Robert Kraft was sitting to my right. Jerry Jones was across the way. Pat Bowlen was on my left, and I'm there. And I wasn't an owner, but I represented the owner. I saw things that all these guys are really smart guys, really smart men who have been very, very successful. and made a lot of money doing whatever, oil or whatever. But the football thing is a different thing. And the guys in the room that said, okay, I earned billions of dollars in oil, but I'm going to hire somebody to do this for me. I'm going to own the team, but I'm going to hire the best people I can to do this. And then some of them don't. Some of them want to coach the team too. And just because you earned millions and billions of dollars doing something else is not going to make you a good football coach necessarily. And so I saw that firsthand. It was a very educational experience for me during that time.
Yeah, I mean, there's that saying that you have to be smart enough to know what you don't know, and some owners, unfortunately, are still learning that lesson.
Yeah, I mean, you most recently, you look at what happened in Washington. They fired their coach, John Gruden's brother, and I go back to the time that Dan Snyder and I banged heads over the Joey Galloway thing when he first came into the league. That's a long time ago. And when he hired Jim Zorn, I phoned him and I said, "Now take care of him." What do you mean? I said, "Dan, look and we became, after our initial fisticuffs, we became kind of friends because Kathy was a cancer survivor, as was his wife. So it changed things for us." And I said, and I could talk to him this way. And I said, "You're hard on coaches. You're hard on those people. Support him. He's a good coach. Support him." "Oh, I will. But it did. Since then they've had a couple coaches. The only guy that's ever done well under him is Gibbs when he came back. Yeah. So there's a good example of I think organizationally how it can affect your team.
How about some of the quarterbacks you've coached with Montana and Favre and Young? And we've talked about this a little bit, but of all those guys, was Brett the most challenging for you? In some ways, I suppose, because he was such a wild stallion coming out of college. I probably had more fun coaching him than anybody I've ever coached. I mean, he was really a delightful guy. I mean, he could make me laugh. He could. During the game, could he make you laugh?
Oh yeah, sure. Oh no, I mean, in the most crucial moment.
Really?
Oh yeah, we're playing the Steelers in a big crucial game, and it's 3rd and short, and a play that will either let us win, or I got a punt, or one of those things in the last 2 minutes. I call timeout. He comes over. He's looking at me. I got Ty Detmer and Mark Brunell, the 2 backup quarterbacks on either side. So I got this little thing going. It's getting Green Bay cold, and I'm looking at him. I go, "Okay, I got 2 plays. Which one do you like the best?" And I said the 2 plays, and he just stares at me, this goofy stare. He's just staring at me. I go, hey, focus. I said, "Focus. I got these 2 plays. Which one you like?" And he's still looking at me, like deer in the headlights. So I grab him. I grabbed his jersey, and I'm not proud of this, but I grabbed his jersey and I jerked it. And I go, "Would you tune in?" And he goes, "Mike, you ought to see your mustache right now." I go, "Oh, you broke me." I start, and Brunell and Detmer they're afraid to laugh, but they're shaking because they don't know what I'm going to do. So I go, "Oh," and I start laughing. I go, "Okay." He goes, "Either one." He goes, "Just call either one. I'll make it work."
And?
Yeah.
Did he make it work?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, but he was like that. Steve and Matt were very similar, very, very bright guys. I had to kind of bang them around early on to get them to buy in because they're very bright guys, and they want to know, "Okay, I don't agree with that. Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Oh, you don't have to question. Just do it." And so both of them, at some point, I had Steve in college. At some point, Matt came into my office one day and said, "I get it. I get it." And I said, "Good." I said, "Didn't you think I was trying to help you the last 2?" Nobody they get it. And Joe, I came in. Joe had already won the MVP a couple times. Great football player. I mean, one of the greatest ever. And my first meeting with him, Bill Walsh set it up, and I didn't know what I was going to say. I was a year removed from being a high school coach, and so I'm there at the 49ers and go, how am I going to do this? And Bill goes, go down and get to know each other a little bit, have a Coke, down at the cafeteria. So I go, so we're walking down the hallway, and Joe taps me and goes, Mike, before you even go there, I want to tell you something. Coach me hard. Just coach me hard. If I'm doing something you don't want, tell me. I'll fix it. And right away, it took that anxiety I had, any anxiousness, away. And he was a fabulous player, and very coachable, good personality. His teammates loved him. No, they were all different, but Favre was a little challenging early on. I mean, we can't even tell you the good stuff.
I know. That's the thing. It's like, well, you talk about Hasselbeck, and I know there was a story in practice where he was working on a snap with Chris Spencer, at the time the center, and I think they dropped 2 snaps in a row, and you said something like, you just lost the effing game or something like that, and I don't know if you stopped practice or what, but our guys were walking outside afterward, and our reporter dropped a mic, and the photographer was right behind him, and Spencer was walking right in front of them because it was during training camp, I think. And the photographer says, great, you just lost the effing game, and Spencer turns around and goes, hey, that's funny. Do you remember that incident?
I do, yeah. And then, you talked about earlier on, we talked about Kathy having an influence. Well, Matt and I got into it in a game once. The only time that happened to this extent. And he came back at me on he had thrown a ball that he shouldn't have thrown because the coverage dictated throw someplace else for a first down. The receiver was wide open right in front of me, and he did something else. So I go, come here. What are you doing? And he goes, and he was like that. He was competitive. Mm-hmm. It's a good side of him. And he came back at me pretty good. So I go sit down. And I said, Seneca, warm up. You're going in. All the coaches on the phone, Mike, what do you? No one talk to me right now. Don't say a word. No one. Seneca, you're playing. Warm up. So Matt, I said, you sit down. I don't want to see you anymore. And then we went on defense, and sometime 5 minutes later, I feel this guy on my side, and it's Matt. And he goes, can we talk? And I said, what? He goes, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. I said, okay, I'm sorry too, And then I sent him back in. Seneca, sit down. Matt, you can play. Okay. I will go home that night, tell the story. Matt told a story to Sarah, his wife. And both the wives said, tomorrow, Kathy said, you're the adult in the room. You call him in and you apologize. You're the adult. He's the player. And then Sarah had told Matt the same thing. You go in. So the wives kind of took care of business. And then we agreed at that time, Paul, okay, when the play is over, you never come over to me. You go to the bench, cool off. I'll cool off. You have your orange juice or oranges or whatever you eat over there. Calm down. Then in 5 minutes, we'll talk. And that's the way we did it after that. So I thought it was pretty smart, actually.
Yeah, I think it is smart. And that's one of those things where his wife and your wife, Kathy, said, they're telling you something you need to know. Instead of, because there's a lot of players in the league right now, especially Antonio Brown, guys of that caliber and those egos, they get surrounded by guys and their pals that are always telling them what they want to know. And they never tell them what they need to know, and that's when they get off the tracks. Don't you think there's some truth to that?
I think there is absolutely truth to that. When I see people, young men with talent, the way these guys, Antonio Brown is an example, probably the greatest example, and just kind of throwing it away, but I think, we talked about it's a different time now. It's a different environment a little bit, where freedom of speech in a football environment, that it's people can say what they want. There's stuff out there, stuff in the locker room. Other players talk about other players. It's just different right now, and so. But so you have to conduct yourself a certain way. I think it's all the lessons that we learned as young people playing the game, and then listening to our high school coaches. And I think those lessons were really important. And I've said this to young people, and when I go around to speak to different groups, that football. Not everyone can play football, and now some people are nervous about their kids playing football. But football, if you play it, it teaches you. There are lessons there, because not everyone gets to play pro football. Not everyone even gets to play college football. But there are lessons there that you can carry over in life about getting knocked down and getting back up, working hard, listening to people, being a good teammate, being unselfish. I mean, these are all things that people in any walk of life, I think, can use and should use. And so it bothers me when I see players conduct themselves a certain way now. And it's too bad.
Sitting here chatting with you reminds me of when you used to come out on our set after the fifth quarter, and I always thought you were presidential when you would sit down and we'd have these conversations right after a game, and you would be it's really hard, I think, for an NFL head coach, any head coach at any level, to come off the field, talk to your players, get a quick shower or whatever, and then go live to do a post-game show, which was demanding on you, Jim Mora at the time, Pete Carroll, before Pete finally said, when is this contract done? I don't want to do this anymore.
Oh, he doesn't do it?
And no. I mean, not with us.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I don't think he does it ever, because I think he did it for 2 years, and when that deal was done, because I think you started it with Todd Lewicki, that was it. He didn't want to come out and do it anymore. And I couldn't blame him.
Yeah.
And you, when you came out to see us, be honest now, Gary Wright used to go in there and he'd walk you out, but he'd have to talk you off the cliff a few times, didn't he?
Gary. I owe Gary a great deal. I really do, because you're exactly right. I come in after a tough loss, and I'd sit at my desk. You've probably been in there and down at the stadium. If it's the same way, maybe it's different now. But I had my own office right off that had the door that went into the press conference. That was the only thing that separated the press from me. But I had my own shower So, but it was in the locker room. So I'd go in, and I'd sit down at the desk and throw something or pound the desk or do whatever I did. And here come Gary Wright. He'd come in, and he was director of communications with the Seahawks, for those people who don't know. And a wonderful man and a good friend. And he'd just stand there, and he'd look at me as I'm pounding or doing whatever I'm doing. And I'd look up at him, and I'd go, "What? What do you want?" And he was a good friend of mine. I'm going, but it's emotional, and I'm goofed up. We lost the game. And he'd go, "Oh, nothing. What's bothering you?" He'd go, What's bothering you?" I go, "What's bothering me? We just lost the game." "Okay." He goes, and then little by little he had a way of getting me to start talking about it. And so, and I'd rant and rave, and and then all of a sudden he would defuse me. I'd run out of juice. And he'd go, "Okay, you feel better now?" And I'd say, "Not really." He goes, "Okay, but it's okay to yell at me. I want you to do that and get all this out of your system, because when you go into that room with whomever, you're not just talking to 25, 30 guys. You're talking to a million people. And you got to conduct yourself in a certain way." And you know what? I can't thank him enough. Now, the show with you made it easy for me, because you were great with that. But he kind of set the tone before I headed into anything like that, particularly after a tough loss.
Yeah, we almost have to. Was there anything extra in those red Solo cups at all before you came out and saw me?
Yeah, but I try and take care of that after I saw you, not before I saw you.
The cool thing was you always went out to dinner with your family.
Yeah.
After on a Sunday night home game, they'd all come in and watch the show, and then you guys would all leave as one big happy family. You go to the steakhouse, and I thought that was a really cool tradition. Is that something you did throughout your career, like on home games, so to speak, when your family could be there?
Yeah, pretty much. It was different, though. Yes, but it was different when you play in Green Bay, as an example. You play a 1:00 game or a noon game because of the time change, and then you're finished by 4:00. So we'd go home. We'd go home and have whatever we'd have at home because it's not dinner time yet. On the West Coast, we do that. Finish at the game starts 1:30. By the time we're done, it's 5:00, and it was a nice tradition. I thought, and we've, as the kids have gotten older, it's hard to keep them all together, and so that was kind of nice, and they were good for me. My daughters are good for me. It's on Mondays, as an example. I have the four girls, and you know them all. Cal and Jenny were the twins, and Emily, and then Gretchen. And now they're older, but in those days, on Monday, they'd all phone me. They were living in different parts of the country and different things, and they were all different. Jenny, the twins, the oldest one, Jenny would phone me, and she was a very analytical football mind. And she'd go, "Dad, too much play action. Or the third down, don't run the draw so much." Or we'd talk football.
Yeah.
Calla, her twin sister, just the officials would drive her cuckoo. She still talks about officials now. And she'd go, "That was a call, this call." We talk about calls. You okay? Emily, and then Gretchen was also, she wanted to be a scout. She wanted to go into the football business and be a scout. And I said, "No, I'm not ready to break that barrier right now. So now she's a King County prosecuting attorney, so she did the right thing." But so she'd phone me. And then Emily, who was the pastor's wife, "How are you feeling? How are you?" So they were all different. They came at me different ways, but it was really good. So the dinner things, yeah, it was really good. And then we had guests. If guests would come, my sister would fly in from someplace. Or one time she told Kathy, we went out for a nice dinner, and she'd go, "Mike's not very social at this." But I was just drained. I was shot. I left everything on the field, so we'd go out and have a nice dinner, but I wasn't real talkative, or I wasn't the life of the party, believe me.
Did you ever take any of Jenny's suggestions to heart? Too much play action?
Oh, sure. Are you kidding? It's funny, and we still talk now. They'll watch a football game, and they'll phone me and go, "Hey, what's Andy doing?" And because they knew Andy.
Yeah.
And or whomever, the guys they knew, but they were great.
Yeah. Well, now I'm going to wrap this up because I could keep you here all day, and but I wanted to ask you about, you're volunteering with the church and you're going there right after this interview. It's really important for you, isn't it, to give back and work in the community now that you're out of football, and it's important, isn't it?
It is important.
Because you spend a lot of time there. You do this a lot.
Well, yeah, and I married a woman who was a missionary when we got married, and she we're involved locally with Medical Teams International, as you know, and I've gone on a couple of mission trips with her after I retired, and whether it's putting in stoves for a mountain group, or putting in concrete floors to help people have a better life, and we're very involved with the Salvation Army here in town. And look at Paul. You've known me a long time. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I did something I loved for a long time and got paid to do it. And I've been blessed that way. There's no question about that. So now, we're taught, give back, help other people, and that's what we try and do. And look, I'm not patting myself on the back. I married quite a woman, and she's been a good example for me. And so, my kids are the same way. So, I love the fact I could stay in Seattle. I didn't get fired in Seattle, so everyone would be mad at me, And I people are great here, and the people here are very generous. They're very generous. So when I'm doing my stuff, it's fun. And I'm proud to do it, and very fortunate to be able to do it.
Yeah, you're out and about a lot. I mean, it's not only the churches and the volunteers, but you're in these community events that you're, like you said, you were with Lofa the other night, Cliff Averill. So you're always involved in that stuff. And I'm going to ask you one last question, because you talked about that last year, and Loaf and I talked about it too, how the one characteristic of the Holmgren teams is that we were all tough. And in that last game of the season, he said he had a cast on, Leroy had this, so-and-so had that. Like, there were 6 guys in casts or playing through this pain or not playing at all. And you had that tough year because we've always talked, injuries are the key to success most of the time in the NFL. If you can keep a healthy team, you're going to have a good run. And your team was beat up that year. Is that what you remember, like that last year in Seattle where you're like, it's like a mash unit around you?
Yeah, it was. And it was too bad because we had a good team. And we had more injuries on that team than any team I'd ever coached. I mean, where guys were lost for the season. And it started with Nate Burleson early in the year, in the first game of the year. And then when we lost Matt and Loaf, we signed guys, Paul. We signed receivers who the previous work were working at gas stations. And then, but you know what? In that year, and I told the team that when I left, I couldn't have been more proud of it. I've never been more proud of a group of guys than that group. Because they were sitting there. Because there were guys like Corin Robinson phoned me. His knee was gone, and we had to let him go because he had issues with alcohol and problems early. But then he straightened it out, and it was one of the blessings. As I said, I could see him how his life was different, and he phoned me. He goes, "Sign me, I can help," and I was able to do that. And that's a great memory I have of being with him at the end and seeing how he had grown up. Mm-hmm. And Jerry Rice, his knee was shot. But those guys, I was really proud of that group. That was the only season where I lost games by that much, but it was too bad. But I got to get the snowballs thrown at me at the end when we beat the Jets and walk around the stadium and listen. That was special. I never forget that.
Yeah, but you say you got the snowballs thrown at you. Doesn't sound like a good thing, Mike.
No, but I think I talk about guys who probably threw some snowballs at me.
Yeah.
They said we were doing it because we liked you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for all your years in Seattle, Mike, and for everything you continue to do. And Kathy, too. You guys are tremendous in the community, and you've been so good. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for the opportunity.